Hey YouTube, how you doing? It's a couple days after June 24th. Roe versus Wade was overturned on June 24th. And I wanted to think about this issue for a couple days before really even, um, you know, writing down any opinions I have on it. And even more so, this video won't be posted until like mid-July. So I really just want to take some time to, I guess, let people mourn um, the situation. Um, when I started this channel, I didn't really expect to make any political videos, but it feels like, I guess, it feels appropriate to at least acknowledge what's happened. It feels weird to ignore it. Um, and I think the purpose of this isn't really to, uh, you know, convince anyone of anything, or fuel any fires. It's really just, I guess, my opinions of the situation. You may agree with them, you may disagree with them. Um, but yeah, this is it's more for, I guess, recording my thoughts long term than to really do anything. So if you want to listen to this, you can. But if this is a touchy subject for you, feel free to turn it off, watch a different one. But I guess starting off, just when I think about it, it feels like the past like what 6 years or so, the U.S. has really kind of become very. I almost feel like the USA has always kind of been like um, this two-sided coin. On one hand, it's a beacon of great potential. People from underprivileged societies may want to come here. We thought of it as like a melting pot, but at the same time, we're also this country that's been one of the worst with slavery. We've been, you know, human rights has not been our strong suit. We were terrible to the Native Americans. We're not very good with immigrants. We're just a very divided, fragmented nation, and it's very odd for a country that prides itself on being inclusive and that sort of stuff. And it's especially interesting with July 4th coming around the corner, which is a pretty important holiday in the USA. Independence Day. And I kind of want to start this off. A coworker I was talking with was telling me that July 4th is their favorite holiday, even more important than Christmas because it reminds us that we're free and we can do whatever we want, uh, compared to other countries. And I remember this specific example he was telling me about, claiming that the USA treats their women better than most other countries, especially Middle Eastern countries. And this was in a workplace environment shortly after the Roe versus Wade decision. And I just wasn't really sure what to say in this conversation. Like, there was a lot of thoughts in my head, and I didn't really want to get into a debate, especially in the workplace. So I just sort of said that, I don't really know what to say at the moment. And I think he could tell that I might have been like uncomfortable with where the conversation was going, because originally when started conversation, it was like as if I was just going to agree with everything he said, but I think it really like uh took him aback that I was kind of like uncomfortable. So the conversation shortly ended after that. Don't have any like negative feelings towards the person at all. It's just it was a very interesting moment. And I guess I just want to clarify right now, that I am pro-choice when it comes to abortion. I believe that it's a woman's body that we're talking about, and therefore her decision. I feel uncomfortable talking about this. I feel included, even like I feel like my opinions here are irrelevant. Just because it's not really at all my business. You know, whatever opinions I have over what someone else does with their body is feels irrelevant to me. Um, and I think that overall, this whole thing regarding abortion is more of a conversation over. It's about like oppressing a demographic, half the population, uh, more so than I think it is a conversation about murder. And I'll get into this a bit. I don't want to get into the bag of worms arguments, the rabbit hole arguments, where it's like, at what point does a fetus become alive? I feel like personally, it's really just comes down to your worldview, and everyone has different opinions on when a fetus is a baby, if it's a baby, or if it's alive. It's just all a matter of opinion to me. You could say, you could make the argument that at the point of conception, it's a potential offspring. You could say that once the baby has a heartbeat, it's a potential offspring. Once it's physically born, it's literally alive. So I think that like there's just so many different like angles you can approach it from, in different contexts, that like you're really just kind of talking to a brick wall. And I'm literally talking to a camera, so it's kind of like talking to a brick wall. But I I pretty much I feel like coming to the conclusion of like my opinion holds more weight than your opinion is pretty much the general, how those kind of conversations go. And I, not the most well versed on this topic, but I feel like I know like a decent amount to hold a conversation. But I just don't want it to be like an echo chamber. I don't want it to be like, um, I don't want it to be like a super debate, and I feel like they're mostly like one or those two when you talk about this. Um, I think it's just it's better to explain this. It's also just better to talk about like the purpose of this video. About it's easier for me to communicate how I think that this is a slippery slope towards oppressing people than it is about you know what the definition of a fetus is and stuff like that. So I think that like when I am faced with these kinds of controversial opinions, I think the first thing I like to try to do is try to find some common ground, because I think that that's the first step to reaching an agreement. I think it's just bad when you're just kind of like you're ranting about something you agree with and not listening to the other side. So I think that I, we can all kind of come to an agreement, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, that like it's fair to say that having an abortion is unethical. I think that this is a good middle ground that it might not be good to bring up now, but I think that after really thinking it through, you can be like, yep, that having an abortion is unethical. But that being said, I don't think that every unethical act should be punished by law. So for example, I don't think that, you know, I think that smoking a cigarette, for example, is unethical, but I don't think that it should be punished by law, if that makes sense. I mean, like, it, you could make the argument that smoking is definitely worse than an abortion. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for anyone around you. It's not healthy for the environment. It's basically littering. Um, there are better coping, alternatives than smoking. And I think what's very interesting is that you can legally smoke a cigarette while you're pregnant. Um, and I would still say that, like, I feel like that's just, I don't know, it's interesting. I would say that, yeah, so I guess when it comes down to smoking, I'm still pro-choice. I'm not like pro-life when it comes to smoking. I think that, if that person wants to, smoke a cigarette, they have the right to do so. I think that I have a right to not have to breathe it in when I'm having dinner. But if they want to smoke a cigarette, they can go to a designated area, smoke a cigarette, and it's none of my business. Um, and I guess I just see it the same way from a certain context. Like I understand that like the reason why people are pro-life, I guess, tends to come from this idea that abortion is murder, which I want to address. But before I do that, I feel like this whole pro-life like terminology, like calling yourself pro-life, is sort of misleading and manipulative. I feel like it sets you up to like have this subconscious mindset to think that anyone who is not pro-life is anti-life, if that makes sense. And if someone's anti-life, then consequently they're pro-murder. And so I think that's why we have these like weird kind of disconnects and rifts between us. I just think that calling yourself pro-life is kind of dishonest in a way. I think that, at the end of the day, we're all pro-life in the context that we care about life, but we're pro-choice because we think that it should ultimately be the person's choice, not that we're anti-life. I don't know if that makes sense. I think that like, but I think that everyone's anti-murder. I think that this is just stemming from this tribalistic mindset of it's us versus them, and you're just kind of like looking for ways to really make these gaps wider. I think that like really thinking about like, you know, this is a step in the right direction, especially if, you know, you do think of pro-choice people as anti-life or pro-murder. Like I think that's just misunderstanding the entire argument. So that's why I feel like it always comes down to this concept of like we're murdering babies, and I think that's really the disconnect. Um, so I want to talk next about like why I think that abortion is not the same as murder. Um, so I want to give this example of a soldier who's fighting in a war, and he ends up killing a soldier on the opposite side. And we recognize that this is definitely a person killing another person. Yet we don't go as far to call it murder because it's a purposeful, like, this is it's there's a separation between murdering someone uh, and like murdering someone out of rage or something and killing someone in the context of war. And I think that context is really the key word here. And abortion is it's really all about the context. I think that, we're able to place these two different acts into two different categories: killing in war and murdering someone. So it's just like, why can't we do the same thing with abortion and murder? It's not really the same thing at all. Um, and I think that abortion is also like what makes it more difficult to have these conversations is that abortion is such a unique example because only like people who can get pregnant can really experience this. It's with the whole war example. The murderer could be a male or a female or anything. But when it comes to abortion, only the person who can physically carry the baby and endure pregnancy can actually experience the abortion. So I think like these are just examples of how I think that this um, sort of adds more layers of context that we should be kind of taking into consideration. And I don't think that it should be in the direction of saying it's more like murder. I think it should be this context should help us further separate the act of abortion from murder. Um, and it is like this bag of worms because at the end of the day, I think that another layer to this also has to do with how you define life in your worldview. And I think that one of the more common uh, opinions, if you're on the side of pro-life, is that all human life is sacred. And um, this is definitely an opinion. Uh, like, because objectively speaking, we are biased in thinking that human life is sacred. Like, it is through our ability to communicate and comprehend that we are able to ascribe value to things, such as human life and concepts like that. So, like, in the context, like, the the claim that human life is sacred is just a very vague claim. And this is not me trying to like bash people who think this. It's just a critique of something that I think that everyone should critique in their lives. I'm not telling you what to think. I just think that you should think about this. Why you think that human life is sacred, um, and what ramifications that this has on your life and how it impacts other people. And if there's any sort of bias or ethnocentric, um, consequences of this perspective. So, like, and this is kind of getting a bit complicated to explain, but like, for example, if all life is sacred, and we're going through this whole thing of like fetuses, I'm not talking about when it becomes life, it's just the potential for all life is sacred, then each sperm cell is technically sacred. And this might be a slippery slope kind of argument kind of thing, but I think that it's actually pretty realistic to address. Like, is every sperm cell, should that be each sperm cell, all whatever million of them, be on a path to fertilize eggs? And there's obviously this evolutionary like process 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 there, where like there's definitely way more sperm cells than there are egg cells. So naturally, if all life is sacred, the whoever is coming up with this argument has to come to terms that there's one egg cell to hundreds of millions of sperm cells, that all these sperm cells are not sacred. But by the definition of potential life being sacred, each sperm cell could be sacred. So what I'm saying is that, like, based on this whole life is sacred argument, you could then make an argument with using that premise that any sperm producing male has killed billions of potential babies. And obviously that's kind of ridiculous, but that's just kind of how I feel about this whole abortion thing. It's just like, um it's just so like, I guess it just sounds, it may sound stupid of me to say this, but like, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if people started making arguments like we need to get rid of birth control because preventing births from occurring is now synonymous with murder, which would imply that sperm needs to fertilize eggs. If we're holding back that process, then we're, murdering potential babies. Like, it's just a very flimsy stance, I guess, that uh, all human life is sacred. Um, and I think, just even for obvious logistical reasons, it's not in our best interest to have like hundreds of billions of humans walking around the earth, because we just couldn't support that. So I think that, like, if anything, like, we're starting to reach points where we're peaking as a species, especially with how fast we've been exponentially growing, that it's almost like counterproductive to try to limit um, birth control, or you know prevent abortion. Like, I guess it just feels very like logistically unsound, as well as ethically unsound, as well as like morally unsound, this whole kind of what's going on. um so I guess it's just hard for me to wrap my head around it. I think, like, most of the arguments that support outlawing abortions stem from these sort of either misinformed like perspectives of like how the world operates, or uh you know these outdated worldviews that come from a uh, idea that human life is sacred. And I previously stated that like no worldview is necessarily better or worse than the other or something like that. And so I guess like you could make the argument maybe I'm being hypocritical for saying that, this person's worldview is outdated. How can I like say that? And I guess my response to that is something like this. Like, I think that at the end of the day, we should all have the ability to have an opinion. We're all free to have opinions. And by me saying that certain opinions are outdated, I'm not saying that we should make laws to prevent people from having these opinions or, celebrating their opinions or anything like that. I don't think that we should make laws to prevent people from participating in these outdated opinions whatsoever. I think that everyone should be free to express themselves. I think that when certain opinions are outdated, um, and also act as like a motivator for other people to uh, impose laws for others to not be able to have opinions, then that's the issue, if that makes sense. So, like, just to reiterate, because I feel like I kind of botched that, I think that everyone's free to have opinions. I think that certain opinions are outdated. I think that if your outdated opinions are trying to make it so that other people can't, uh, have their own opinions or anything like that, then that is an issue. Um, and so, pretty much ultimately, if you have an ethnocentric opinion as your worldview, then I think that's bad. Um, and I think that is logically sound with what I'm trying to say, and also is supported by, there isn't really a bad opinion unless one that is preventing others people from having opinions. I don't know if that makes sense, but in conclusion, I guess from all this, I just want to express that I feel like overall this was a loss for the USA, and I think we'll inevitably bounce back from it. But I also just think it's really ironic having something like this occur so close to July 4th. It's just around the corner, and it's kind of a downer on the, I'm not really feeling patriotic at all. And I feel like the people who tend to argue that I should be more patriotic are also the people who tend to have more ethnocentric opinions. And I think that these ethnocentric opinions are kind of doing the exact opposite of what it means to be patriotic and love the USA. Like, I feel like these ethnocentric opinions are trying to get us to assimilate to a singular culture rather than be a cultural melting pot, which is what I think the USA should be. So as we, impose these laws that cause people to have to assimilate under one flag, one God, one culture, rather than being able to be, multiple cultures and multiple, worship multiple gods or not a god at all, or be able to, wave the flag if we're feeling patriotic one day, or take a knee if we want to another day. Like, I think that we should be more diverse and inclusive, but it seems like things like this are preventing that. Overall, in regard to abortion, it's not my body, it's not my choice. At the end of the day, these are my opinions. I don't really want to force anyone to be pro-choice. I just want to support my friends who are women, want to support my family who are women, and pretty much anyone else who is will be impacted by this. I think that I'm torn if I should say this stuff. Should I remain not say anything and ignore it, or should I at least acknowledge what's happening? And I think it's really not my position at all to talk about this, but if anyone is interested in my opinions, these are what they are. And, if there's anything that I've gotten wrong or said incorrectly, I'm totally open to being corrected and changing my worldview to better fit, a more, uh, I guess, just a. I'm open to updating my worldview, whatever that means. If as whatever can make me a better person, I guess. So yeah, life's a continuous journey. We're not at a destination quite yet, but I hope that you know we get to a good destination eventually. I guess I don't know. Have a good one. I'll see you later. Hopefully you're doing okay with all that's been happening, and stay golden pony boy. I don't know, that's a stupid outro.